Hey, so tonight we're starting the series, How to Not Be a Jerk. And I know what some of you might be thinking. We thought we must have a guest speaker in because Clint's the biggest jerk that there is. How's he teaching on that? Well, hopefully we understand. We're all on a journey somewhere, and we're going to talk about how to not be a jerk. But to start this off, I want us to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to put up on the screen here someone who you might recognize from the big screen, who's a bit of a jerk in the movies that they're in, and I just want to see how smart you are, or how much of a movie buff you are, if you can name these people and the movie that they come from. If you do know it, bang it in the comments below. Show everyone that you are, in fact, the biggest movie buff around. Here's our very first one. Do you know who this is? Come on. The movie Happy Gilmore, that is Shooter McGavin, classic golf, goofy movie, Shooter McGavin. Okay, this one, you might need to be just a little bit older to appreciate this next one. One of my favorites though. Do you know who this is? What is the movie? I think some people have got a good idea. The name of the movie might come a little bit easier than the person. This is from Back to the Future, and his name is Biff. That's right. Third and final one. Again, name of the movie is going to come easy. Name of the character, very, very hard. Who have we got here? Come on, have you got it? Show us in the comments below. Who is this? This is from the movie Titanic. I know you know that, but what's his name? Can anyone remember? 3, 2, 1. His name is Cal. Cal from Titanic. The reason I wanted to do that is because it is really, really easy to look out and see other people who are jerks. It's really easy for us to get to a place where it's like, man, there's this person's a jerk and that person's a jerk. But the reason we've titled this series, How to Not Be a Jerk, is because it's very easy to look out windows, but what we often don't do is look in the mirror. And what we want to do through this series is actually look in the mirror, and how do we make sure that we're not the jerk? Because if you're anything like me, it's really easy to look through the window and look at others and point fingers when they're being the jerk, but sometimes it can be a lot harder to see the jerk in ourselves and the jerk that's in the mirror. So through this, so we've titled this series, How to Not Be a Jerk, because actually being someone that always points out who the jerks are is actually a bit of a jerk move in and of itself. So we're going to use this series really as a way to help us look in the mirror, not just out the window at other people. And a lot of the stuff that we're going to cover, whether you've been in church for a long time, whether you've never been in church before, a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about is going to probably be almost more of a reminder than something new. But one famous poet once said that most of us need to be reminded a whole lot more than we need to be taught. So I'm sure as we go through this series that we're all just going to be reminded of some things that we know that we know to be true, and maybe they've just slipped a little bit in our behavior. And so what I'd like to do though before I really get into the content of this series is just take a few moments as we start the series, as we launch it, to help you understand why we're doing it. And there's 3 big reasons as to why we're doing the series. The first one is because you know and I know that the biggest challenges that we face are people challenges. In fact, what causes you to lose the most sleep at night isn't the overwhelm of the workload that you might have to be working through, but it's the overwhelm of the people situations that make up the team that's working through that workload, I bet. When you've got to have that critical conversation with your partner, with your spouse, you've got to have that critical conversation with your co-worker, maybe your manager or someone that you're managing. Maybe you've got to have a critical conversation with your kids, your best friend, whoever it might be. That's what causes us to lose sleep at night. We can have all the work in the world on, but the size of the workload doesn't cause us to lose sleep as much as the people challenges within that workload. And I'm sure that's true for you. And I know when you look back on your life and you think, man, what are the things that have weighed on me the most, that have drained me the most? It really is the people side of things, not the enormity of the task or the enormity of the projects that really drain us. Because people challenges are, for all of us, our biggest challenge. Now, the second reason I want to do this series is because people smarts trump intellectual smarts. In terms of our success and where we go in life, that our people smarts really are more important than our intellectual smarts. And in the New Zealand sort of education system, there's a huge emphasis, there's a huge focus on the intellectual smarts. They're right from, early childhood education right through to tertiary, most of the focus is on our intellectual prowess. Yet it is our people smarts, our ability to engage with and work with people that really set us up to succeed in life. It was Daniel Goleman who said that EQ is the number one predictor of professional success and personal excellence. And one thing I know about you is you're someone who no doubt wants professional success and personal excellence. And so if we're going to get there, EQ or people smarts is so important. And we might go, well, Daniel Goleman, of course he's going to say that. He's the one who wrote the book, Emotional Intelligence. Of course he's going to say that, so that makes sense. But what Daniel Goleman has actually come out and said in recent years is that actually your intellectual smarts are really important, because there are certain professions and there are certain doors that only open to people that have got a certain level of intellectual smarts. So you don't want to ignore intellectual smarts, because you're not even going to get in the door if you haven't got intellectual smarts. But it really is your people smarts that are going to ensure you rise to the top in that profession or in that space. If you haven't got people smarts, your career and your own personal ability to make a difference in the world is going to be somewhat stagnated, because this is such an important part of life. In fact, Jack Welch, who was the CEO and the chairman of General Electric. Now, General Electric is a company that has so many different businesses underneath it that Jack Welch's primary job was to raise up leaders, CEOs of each of these different business units. And this is what he has to say. A leader's intelligence has to have a strong emotional component. He or she has to have high levels of self-awareness, maturity, and self-control. She must be able to withstand the heat, handle setbacks, and when those lucky moments arise, enjoy success with equal part of joy and humility. No doubt emotional intelligence is more rare than book smarts, but my experience says that it is actually more important in the making of a leader. You just can't ignore it. So there's a powerful statement. And as we go through this series, and Daniel Goleman, who really wrote the book on emotional intelligence, he sort of breaks it into 4 quadrants. And this series is really going to talk to 2 of those quadrants. One is about self-awareness, because what happens for most of us is, so all of us have the jerk that lurks within us. And for most of us, when we're being that jerk, we don't intend to be a jerk. We just do it accidentally. See, there's not a lot of people out there, I don't think, that are intentionally evil, that are intentionally looking to harm people. But what we can often find ourselves doing is being that jerk just accidentally. And we don't even know it. We're trying to be nice and we're trying to be kind, but there's certain things that we do that people are going, oh, he's a jerk, she's a jerk, shouldn't do that. And we don't even aware of it. And so self-awareness is a big part of that. And so again, that's one of the big reasons why we've called the series How Not to Be a Jerk, because rather than pointing fingers at everyone, we're looking at ourselves. It was Zig Ziglar who said that if you've got one finger pointing out that way, there's 3 coming back this way. So we want to be the sort of people that aren't just focused on what's happening out there, but what's happening in here. And the other big component in Daniel Goleman's sort of emotional intelligence side that we'll touch on a lot of this is just the people skills side of it. So I think it's going to be really helpful for so many of us. Yet it is this third reason that really sits at the core and at the heart of why we're doing this series. And the reason for that is the church should be defined by our love for one another. Come on, the church, those of us who call ourselves Christians, we should be defined. The marker of the church should be our love for one another. When people look at us, they should be like, man, that person must be a follower of Christ, not because we go to a church on a Sunday, not because we can quote Bible verses, not because we know all the lyrics to the latest worship songs, not because we don't use profanity or we dress a certain way or anything like that. No. The church should be defined by the way that we love one another. That when people look at the way we live, they should be like, wow, that is incredible. Even when you're hurt, even when your integrity's been attacked, even when you've been let down, even when people are taking advantage of you, you still choose to be loving. That's what should be the defining characteristic of a church. And now maybe you're watching this and you're like, you're hesitant about Christianity. You push back on Christianity even. Maybe you're just like, oh, I don't really see the value in Christianity. Could I suggest that if you saw Christians living the way that Christ called us to live, where the way that we loved one another really was the defining characteristic, would you be a lot more willing to engage with faith? Would you be a lot more willing to look into Christianity? Would that change the mindset that you have about it? I think that it really, really would. Because when we really actually live the way that Christ called us to live, there is something compelling, there is something beautiful, there is something amazing about it. And so what I'd like you to do, if you're watching this and you're not yet a Christian or you've got reservations around this, I'd love you to watch this series with a lens of like, man, that's what Jesus called the church to be. Because what so many people do is they blame us, they picture us Christians and go, man, if that's what God looks like, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And I just want to encourage you that the behavior you might see from Christians doesn't necessarily, unfortunately, reflect the God whom we serve. And hopefully through this series, you'll see the type of people that God calls us to be. And what I want you to do is take your picture of God from that rather than what you have seen or the way people have treated you. Because unfortunately, us as Christians have often done a very bad job of representing the God who loves you, who values you, who cares for you so, so deeply. So there's sort of three quick reasons why we wanted to talk about the church. And let me just dive into this one a little bit further. Because this is what Jesus said. Jesus is with his disciples one day and he says, "A new command I give you, love one another." Now you might pause that right there and go, hang on a minute, Jesus, this isn't new. That's been around for a long time. We've always been told to love one another. But when it comes to this, I think there's levels. And the lowest level of love one another is one that we hear occasionally where people say, treat others or love others the way that they love you, or treat people the way that they treat you, which is really baseline, which is really basic, and it's really easy to do because if someone's nice to me, it's really easy for me to be nice back. If someone's generous to me, I want to be generous to them. If someone's mean to me, well, then I'm allowed to be mean back. If someone's angry at me, I can get angry back. That's baseline, treat others as they treat you. Then we can lift it up a level, and this is where most people sit, where this is that whole idea is treat others the way you want to be treated. So I'm not going to treat you the way that you're treating me. No, I'm going to treat you the way that I want to be treated. So if you're being mean to me, hey, I still want to be nice back. And that's kind of a thing that's often talked about within teams and in different concepts. Treat others the way that you want to be treated. But look at what Jesus does here. He doesn't go baseline. He doesn't go for the standard level. He goes like top level, next level. This is unbelievable. He says, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. How did Jesus love us? Hey, he was willing to die for us. And I'm going to get a little bit gruesome here for a moment because some, especially males, some of you males, you're watching this and you're thinking, lovey-dovey, oh yeah, this is just silly. This is just this like concept that's out there. But can I tell you what love really looks like? You see, love is strength. Love requires power. Love requires like just the most strong internal just strength I think that anyone could ever muster. Because Jesus said there is no greater love than he who would lay down his life for his friends. And how did Jesus die? Jesus died laying down his life for his friends. He died with having nails pierced through his hands as he hung on a wooden cross, nails through his feet. What doctors and physiological experts say is that when someone's hanging on a cross being crucified, that it hurts so much that your body droops. But in order to breathe, you've actually got to put weight on yourself so you can actually breathe and then breathe out. So every time you take a breath, there's an excruciating pain. Jesus chose to do this. Why? Because this is a picture of love. Not only that, when Jesus died, he was covered in blood. There was sweat coming all over him. There was a very good chance he was probably vomiting at some stage. And do you know what happens when a human being dies? Jesus was then naked as well. Do you know what happens when a human body dies? Our bowels release. So here's Jesus on this cross, naked, human feces all around him, blood covering him, sweat coming out of him, probably vomit around him, in the most horrible, most shameful position a human could find himself. Why would he do that? Why would he have the strength and the resolve to put himself through that? Something that none of us would ever put ourselves through, because he loves us. See, love isn't this thing that's out there. It's like, oh, lovey-dovey, nice sort of thing. No. Love takes strength. Love takes power. The most masculine thing we can do often is love someone. So if you're a guy thinking that, I just want to change maybe the perception or maybe what you think of when you think of the word love. And Jesus calls us as his church to love one another. And so, come on, let's just think this for a moment. For those of us who are Christians, Jesus, notice he used the word, and here you must. This isn't like, oh, you can ignore this. No, he says we must love one another. That means we've got to genuinely care for each other. That means when there's disagreements, we've actually got to talk things through. We've got to do our best to understand what people are saying to us. This means that when it'd be easier just to walk away and start again somewhere, no, I'm going to do the hard yards of engaging in this conflict. Why? Because I love these people and it's my responsibility to love them. And when we're really loving people this way, everyone will know that we are his disciples. So this series is really going to help position us to be a people who can love one another. Because do you know when it gets really, really hard to love people is when we're being jerks. In fact, this might sound funny, but as someone who pastors a church, what breaks my heart is when you see people pull away from the church or churches split and silly things happen. And 99% of the time, that doesn't happen because of theological challenges. That happens because of people challenges, and people are often acting like jerks, and so that causes others to go here or go there or just fall away or split away. And it's got nothing to do with what's true. It's got nothing to do with theological stuff, but purely relational stuff. So when we can make sure we're looking in that mirror and saying, hey, how can I make sure that I'm not a jerk? And we're going to create a church that really can do what Jesus asked us to do. And then we're using this image really as sort of the series graphic for this series. And the reason we're using this image is because just as a painter might have a big canvas, the painter has the ability with their brush to choose the right brush to use, to reach out and to select the color that they want to use, and then use the techniques that they need to paint the picture that they're trying to produce. And when it comes to our lives, you and I, we are painting the story of our lives. When it comes to how we engage and how we interact with people, we can pick what brush we use, we can choose what color paint we use, and we can determine what stroke we want to put on to paint the story that our life is telling. And we can choose to use nice colors that are going to bring out the best, colors that are like attractive and look good, or we can use colors that are the opposite. And so just as an artist with his fresh canvas can determine what goes on that canvas, we determine the story of our life. And what I love even more about this is, even when there's some ugly on a canvas, the incredible thing is you can actually over time grab new color paint, use a different technique, and what was ugly before can be replaced by something so much more beautiful if you're willing to do the work. And just as a little aside, this what I want to point out right from the outset is the colors that we use and the strokes that we've got and the brushes we've got access to differ from person to person. See, some people watching this have been brought up in an incredible environment where they were so well loved, where they knew they were valued from the day they were born, where the words that were around them were consistently building them up. They were consistently told who they can be and what they can do. And so there's some people that have got access to easier color, or to certain colors easier than others, and access to a greater variety of brushes and have a bit more technique. And other people, because of their life experience, because of the family that they were born into, maybe because of certain things that happened to them when they were young or even as they got older, the way that different people might have betrayed them or hurt them or abused or done some things, have actually made it a lot harder to reach those same colors. And what we do have to understand is that no matter what's happened in the past, we still have the choice as to what color we're going to use as we paint this canvas. And honestly, for some people, painting something beautiful is a lot harder because of what's happened in their life, and for others, it's easier. And I want to acknowledge that right off the bat, and that's really, really important. But what I also want everyone to understand is that we still get to choose what colors we paint. And so we can point to all these excuses as to why I'm a jerk, and if this never happened and that never happened, and you can do that, but that's called a victim mentality. And if we're going to really move forward in our lives, we can't hold on to a victim mentality. We've got to move forward with a growth mindset that says, man, I get to choose these colors. And it might be a whole lot harder for me than it is for her. And I want to have access to the same brushes at the moment as he does. But I can still choose what brush I'm using and what colors I'm painting. So that's kind of why we've used this visual for the series. And so what I'm going to do today and over the rest of the series is I'm just going to talk about different jerk moves. Because you've seen this, right? When someone's been a jerk, we have to go, that was a bit of a jerk move, wasn't it? That was a jerk move. You made that real difficult. So what I'm going to do each week is just look at a few different jerk moves. And we're going to go, hey, do I see that jerk move in the mirror? Then we're going to flip it around and say, well, if that's what jerks do, what should I do? What's sort of the opposite side of that? Because we don't want to just look at all the bad things people do. We actually want to look at the good. Because if you study all the bad things that happen, do you know what you end up with? You learn how to be not bad. But when you study what good people do, you actually learn how to be good. And we don't want to settle for not bad. We want to keep going for good, for great, for excellent. So that's what we're going to do. I've got 2 to cover with us today. So let's dive in. The first one I want to look at, the first jerk move is people who are pushy. People who are pushy. You know those people that are really trying to assert their agenda on you. When I think of someone who's pushy, and again, sorry if you're watching this and I offend you because I'm sure you're not one of these people, but is that classic example of a used car salesman who's just trying to push their will on you, push that car on you, make you buy it now, make you sign up now, make you pay the deposit now, really, really pushy. And we often find ourselves, don't we, around some people who are pushy, who are trying to push their agenda on us because they want something from us. And do you know what people who are pushy are often labeled? Jerks. So you and I, we don't want to be people who are pushy. Well, why do we label people who are pushy jerks? What's wrong with people who are being pushy? The problem with people who are pushy is they're often trying to push their agenda on us. And when someone pushes their agenda on us and we don't want that to be our agenda, but we end up falling in line with it anyway, do you know what often happens? That person becomes a regret. And I don't know about you, but if I'm genuinely loving those people that are around me, I never want to become his regret. I never want to be her regret. I never want the people around me to get to a point 5 years down the track, 2 years down the track, 20 years, whatever it might be down the track and go, man, I regret the day that I met Clint. I regret the moment that our paths crossed. Man, I so regret that because he forced me to do this, he forced me to do that. If I'm going to be someone who loves someone, I'm not going to show up in their story as a regret. So if we're not going to show up as a regret, we can't be pushy. Rather, we're going to be patient. We're going to be patient with people. Rather than forcing our agenda onto them, we're going to say, hey, I want to work at your pace. I want to do things the way that you want them done. This is not about my agenda, but it's about yours, and I'm willing to go at your pace rather than trying to drag you along at mine. See, the reason that we tend to be pushy is because a lot of us, we genuinely often think that the whole world revolves around us, that everyone else in the world is there to serve us, and they're there to grow our kingdom and to make us better and to make us happy. And if everyone just got on board with that, if everyone knew that life was about Clint's kingdom and making sure Clint's happy, then life would be good. But the problem is, I'm not the center of the world, am I? I'm far, far, far from it. So when I find myself being pushy, it's often because I discover that people aren't putting me at the center of their world like I think that they should. And I just actually need to slow down and be patient because actually my world isn't any more important than their world. And that is really, really vital. So if we're gonna do this well and not be labeled jerks, no, we're not gonna be pushy, we're gonna be patient. One of the ways where we often talk to our young people, we actually teach this to adults as well because the power of it's so true, but we really focus on this with our teenagers, is the saying that purity paves the way to intimacy. Purity paves the way to intimacy. And what we mean by that is that if you stay pure, you're actually going to have a lot more intimate relationships longer in life, or greater intimacy with your spouse later in life if you can remain pure earlier in life. And so we want to teach this to our teenagers. And one thing we just kind of know that happens in the world in which we live is often, especially if you're a young lady, I really want you to hear this, it's often guys that are saying to girls, if you really love me, you would do this relationally or sexually with me. If you really love me, if you really love me, you do this. And they can often rush people and they can put pressure on people to do things that maybe they don't want to do. That's called being a jerk rather than going, hey, no, we're going to do this patiently. I'm going to do this patiently. Why? Because I care for you, because what you want's more important than what I want. So what are we going to do? We're going to refuse to be pushy and we're going to be people who are patient. Now, second jerk move. Jerk move number 2 is being harsh. Being harsh. Come on, I bet you don't have to think too long to find an example of a time that someone was overly harsh to you. And you're like, why are you so harsh? I just spilled water on the carpet. You don't need to lose your rocker at me because I spilled some water on the carpet. That's just crazy. And yet, if you're like me, you can probably also think at times where you've been overly harsh to people around you, where your response to something that's happened up here, yet it really should have only been down here. And when we see someone who's overly harsh, what do we think? Like, man, you're a jerk. You're a jerk. And this is the reason why. You see, because say I'm having a conversation with one of my teams. I'm talking with Jono. And I say, Jono, man, and I'm real bad. I have this bad conversation with him. I want to talk to him about something. I have a real bad conversation. And someone comes up to me and goes, Clint, why did you talk to Jono like that? You suck. You're the worst manager ever. I can't even believe you're a Christian. How can you run a church? I saw the way you talk to Jono. Man, your attitude sucks. You got to sort that out. Do you know what's going to happen on the other side of that? I'm going to think the person that came to me has got a problem. I'm not going to even think about my conversation with Jono. I want to think, man, that person's crazy. That person's nuts. That person's got a problem. I'm going to say they're the jerk and I'm fine. Yet if someone else comes along and says, hey, Clint, just observed. Man, you just had that conversation with Jono. Hey, well, how did you think that went? What did you think of the tone that you used in your language? What do you think about the words that you said? Is there a way you could have had that conversation a little bit more differently? Because I actually think the way you spoke to Jono was a bit out of line and not really fitting for someone with your level of role within our church. And in fact, if I'm really honest, it almost probably is not even a way that a Christian should speak to anyone. See, if someone comes to me and has that conversation like that and trying to teach me about being harsh, I'm probably going to go, tell me, can you help me understand? Like, what did I do wrong? Because again, a lot of the times we might act harshly is not because I'm an evil person, but because I'm unaware of how I'm coming across to those that are around me. And if someone comes in and talks to me kindly and in a caring way, tell me, see what I've done wrong, I'm going to be a lot more open to saying, hey, maybe the jerk is in the mirror, not the jerk's out there. So we don't want to be people who are harsh. We don't want to be people who are harsh. And what I'd love to do here is just take you to one passage. This is back in Exodus. And in this passage, bit of context, God's talking to Moses, and God wants to use Moses to bring the Israelites out of captivity in Egypt. And this is what the Lord says to Moses. I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. I'm concerned because they've been treated harshly. So I have come down to rescue them from the land of the Egyptians and to bring them out of that land to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And the reason I want you to hear that is sometimes we're in a position where we're being treated harshly, where it feels like over and over again there's that maybe it's a group of people, maybe it's a person in our life that's always speaking harshly to us. And I want you to know that if you are in that place right now, that you are not alone. The Lord says, I have seen the misery of my people. I have heard them crying out because of the harsh treatment they have been receiving. So if that's you, can I let you know that God knows what's going on? When you cry out to Him, man, He's there and He cares. And we care about you. And if there's anything we can do, please feel free to comment below, but maybe you prefer just to send us a private message to let us know. We'd love to put some people around you because, man, no one deserves to be treated harshly. And it's so important for you to know that you are not alone in this. And so people being treated harshly happens all the time, unfortunately. And again, the reason it happens is because people are trying to build their own kingdoms. And they're so worried about what I can build, what can I have, that we're willing to mistreat people and treat them harshly and abuse them in order to get what we want. And that is wrong, but it is just such a part of the human condition, unfortunately. So a lot of us find ourselves in a place where we're being treated harshly because someone else's kingdom is so important to them. But hey, if we want to be someone, if we don't want to be a jerk, if we don't want to be someone who's harsh, what do we want to be? We want to be someone who's kind. We want to be someone who's caring, who's considerate. It's very important that, man, we treat people with kindness. So we talked before about why we don't want to be pushy because we don't want to become someone's regret. The reason we don't want to treat someone harshly is because people matter. When you think about the things that matter most on this planet, the thing that matters most, that has the most value on earth, it's not gold, it's not a painting that's worth millions and millions of dollars, it's not a massive beachfront property on the nicest beach in the Caribbean. I'll tell you what matters most in this world is people. In fact, people are the thing that matters most. in business, there's sort of this saying that people are our greatest asset. And I love the sentiment of that people really are the most important thing. Yet saying that people are an asset is kind of wrong, because people aren't an asset. People are so much more important than an asset. People are so important. Jesus didn't come so that stuff could be well looked after. Jesus didn't come and give his life so we could have the latest and best technology, the fastest cars, live in the right neighborhoods, in the right streets. No. Jesus came so that you and I, so that people could have a right standing, a relationship with our Heavenly Father, that we could go into eternity, because people are the thing that matters most. And so what we've got to understand, when we want to be harsh to someone, we've got to remember that person we're about to be harsh to is someone who's got dreams, someone who's got goals, is someone who's had heartbreaks, someone who's had to confront failure in their life, someone who's got carrying probably a level of guilt, maybe a level of shame, someone who's got their own fears, who's got their own doubts, someone who has aspirations for where things are going to go. That every time we want to be harsh, someone, we've got to remember, man, that's someone's mum, that's someone's son, that's someone's daughter, that's someone's brother, that's someone who really matters to our Heavenly Father. And so we don't want to go and be harsh to people. No. We want to be the sort of person who goes in and is always kind. So what we want to do is we want to be kind. We're not going to be harsh. We're going to be kind. We're not going to be pushy. We're going to be patient. And let me tell you one thing that Paul says. He's writing in one of his letters to the Colossians. He says, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved." And what I love about what Paul does here is, before he tells people what to do, he reminds them who they are. He says, hey, remember, you are God's chosen people. You're holy. You are dearly loved. He's saying, man, you've got to understand. If you understand this, it makes what I'm going to say next a whole lot easier. You've been chosen. You've been set apart. You are being picked out by God. Man, you're holy. You're dearly, dearly loved. You matter so much. Then he says, clothe yourself. And I love what he says here about clothe yourself, because when we put on clothes, there's a sense of intentionality. My clothes just don't appear in my body. I don't wake up and all of a sudden I'm dressed for the day. I'll go have a shower, I'll put on my clothes, I'll choose what I'm going to wear. There's an intentionality of putting things on. There's so much I could choose to put on, yet this is what I've chosen. He's saying, just as you choose to put on your clothes that you're wearing, I want you to choose sort of what else you're going to put on. He says, I want you to clothe yourself with compassion and kindness. You need to position yourself with compassion, clothe yourself with compassion and with kindness. See, if we clothe ourselves with compassion and kindness, you know what? It's almost impossible to be harsh, isn't it? If I choose to be compassionate, if I choose to be kind, there is no way I can be harsh. And he says, clothe yourself with humility. Look, the reason we're pushy and the reason that we're harsh is because we're proud. It's because we think everyone's around to serve us and to build our kingdom and to make us happy and put us at the center of the world. Hey, when we clothe ourselves with humility, what we're doing is saying, no. It's not about me. It's not about me. There's something bigger going on here. I'm not at the center of it. I play a part, but I'm not at the center of it. And he says, I want you to clothe yourself with gentleness and patience. Do you know what? It's really, really hard to be pushy and gentle at the same time. How can I be pushing you towards something if I'm being gentle? If I'm being gentle, I might guide you. I might lead you. I might hold your hands and take you with me. But if I'm being gentle, man, I'm going at your pace. I'm letting you determine how things are going. There's no pushing. There's no shoving. There's no make it happen now. There's no sort of if you don't, I'm going to. There's no threats or anything like that. It's just gentle. And then this is what we've been talking about anyway, patient. You can't be pushy and patient at the same time. And I think that sort of sums up everything we've been talking about today so well. So come on, as you get dressed tomorrow, what are you going to put on? Let's not put on harsh words. Let's not put on a pushy attitude. Let's clothe ourselves with compassion. Let's clothe ourselves with kindness, with humility, with gentleness, and with patience. Because I'll tell you what, if we do that, we'll go a long way to not being the jerk. And so what I'd love to do right now is just let you to take a moment. I'd love to just play a song for you guys. I'd love you to be able to just sit back, relax, enjoy this song, maybe let its lyrics just speak to you. In Christian language, I say minister to you. Speak to the core of who you are. And then what I'd love to do is come back and pray for you. So hey, enjoy this, and I'll see you shortly.